Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a huge question, and we're going to use some ancient texts to see how the choices of two very different people completely shape their destinies.
So, is your life already written in stone? Or do the decisions you make actually carve out your path? That's what we're going to explore. We're going to weave together three different parts of the Bible, from Chronicles, Acts, and even Proverbs, to tell this one really powerful story. It's all about God's big plan, and where our choices fit into that whole picture. And we're going to start with a king who, he had it all and lost everything.
So yeah, our story kicks off not with some big hero, but with a warning. It's a real cautionary tale, about a king who was handed every advantage you could possibly imagine, and yet, in the end, he lost the whole thing.
Okay, so to really get why Saul's fall was so tragic, you have to understand just how high he started. The book of 1 Chronicles actually spends a lot of time laying out his background, his family tree, and it's impressive. See, he wasn't just some random guy. He came from the tribe of Benjamin, a family line that God had a special purpose for. He was basically set up for success, a huge inheritance, a massive opportunity to lead a nation.
But, and this is a big but, despite that incredible start, the story is brutally honest about why it all went wrong. The text doesn't beat around the bush at all. It just says it flat out. Saul died because he broke faith with the Lord. This wasn't bad luck. It wasn't a roll of the dice. It was a choice, a specific, deliberate breach of trust. So, how does a king with everything going for him end up like that? Well, the text gives us a play-by-play. It points to three specific choices, three fatal missteps that just sealed his fate. First, he flat out disobeyed a direct command from God. Then, when he was in a jam, a real crisis, instead of turning to God for help, he went and consulted a medium. And that third point, it just wraps it all up, doesn't it? He did not seek the Lord. These choices, they took a story that was full of potential and just turned it into this tragic, irreversible loss.
Saul's whole life is this really powerful, kind of sobering reminder for us. Having a great start, a fancy family tree, even a kingdom, it means nothing if your heart isn't in the right place, if it's not loyal to God. The lesson here is so clear. It's not how you start the race that counts, it's how you finish.
Okay, so Saul's story shows us what disobedience looks like. Now let's do a complete 180. We're going to pivot from a king in his palace to a prisoner on a storm-tossed ship, from a crisis on the battlefield to a crisis on the open sea. This next story is all about faith in the middle of absolute chaos.
So let's set the scene, because the stakes are incredibly high. We're in the book of Acts now. The Apostle Paul, he's a prisoner on a ship, and he's not alone. There are 275 other people on board. We're talking soldiers, sailors, other prisoners, the whole lot. And they are sailing straight into a disaster, a catastrophic hurricane-level storm.
Just try to picture this. For 2 solid weeks, 14 days, this monster storm just pummels the ship. No sun, no stars, no way to navigate. The ship itself is literally being torn apart. The text actually says that they gave up all hope of being saved. It was over. And it's right there, in that moment of complete and utter despair, when all human effort is useless. That's when a message from God breaks through all that chaos.
So in what is, literally their darkest hour, God sends an angel to Paul. But here's the amazing part. The message isn't just for Paul. It's a promise that not only will he survive, but so will every single person on that ship. Think about that. God's grace was covering all 276 souls on board, all because of this one man's faith.
And this is where we see the night and day difference between him and King Saul. When Paul is in his crisis, his response isn't fear. He doesn't go looking for some other spiritual guru. No. It was just this immediate, rock-solid declaration of trust in what God said. He literally just turns to everyone on the ship and says, "I believe God."
So what happened? Well, the ship was a total loss. It got smashed to pieces on the rocks. But the people? Their outcome was exactly what God had promised. Every last one of them, all 276, made it safely to shore on the island of Malta. You see, Paul's faith didn't just save himself, it overflowed and became this blessing that saved everyone around him too.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got 2 men, Saul and Paul. 2 huge, life-threatening crises, and 2 totally wildly different outcomes. The big question is, why? Well, the book of Proverbs, it's like the instruction manual. It gives us the wisdom, the sort of operating principles behind why things went so differently for them.
Proverbs 19, it just jumps right in with this core principle that gets to the very heart of these two stories. It basically says that God cares way more about your character, your integrity, than he does about your status or how successful you look on the outside, right? I mean, think about it. Saul was a powerful king who was crooked in his ways. Paul was a poor prisoner who walked with integrity. God's value system is completely the opposite of the world's.
And the whole chapter is just packed with this kind of practical advice, always comparing the path of wisdom with the path of foolishness. You see these warnings, right? Like, don't rush into things without knowing what you're doing. And don't foolishly blame God for your own bad decisions. I mean, that's Saul's story in a nutshell. But then on the flip side, you see this promise that if you respect God, it leads to real life and contentment. That's exactly what Paul had, even in the middle of a shipwreck.
And this verse right here, this really brings it all together. It's the central theme connecting everything. Look, we all make plans, right? We all have goals and ambitions. Saul, he had plans to keep his kingdom forever. The sailors, they had a plan for a safe trip. But what Proverbs reminds us is that at the end of the day, it's the Lord's purpose that's going to win out. So the real question for us is, are our choices lining up with that purpose, or are they fighting against it?
Okay, let's pull the stories of Saul and Paul back together for one last look, so we can really nail down the big takeaway here.
I mean, when you put them side by side like this, the difference is just, wow, it's stark. They both faced an absolutely overwhelming crisis. But here's the key. The crisis wasn't what decided the outcome. Their choice in the middle of that crisis is what decided everything. Saul chose disobedience that came from a place of fear. Paul chose faith that came from a place of trust. And well, the results, they really do speak for themselves.
So here's the really crucial point. Both of these men were living inside of God's big picture plan. God's purpose was going to happen no matter what. Paul was going to get to Rome. The kingdom was going to be handed over to David. That was a done deal. But one man chose the path of faith and got to experience God's deliverance and see his purpose fulfilled. The other guy? He chose the path of fear and experienced destruction and total loss. Same plan, different journey.
And really, that leaves all of us with a final thought, a way to turn this ancient wisdom into a really personal question for right now. Because just like Saul and Paul, your race is still going. You're going to face your own storms, your own battles. The story of your life, it isn't over yet. So after seeing all this, the question is, how are you going to choose to finish?